Okay, this is going to be part 5 of art quotes. It's from this book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes, but there's more quotes in these lectures than there are in the actual book because the word processor file is 5,000 pages. The book's about 750 pages, something like that. Okay, so continuing with art quotes. Every great work of art contains the same feature, unity. Everything in the work supports the rest. Aristotle had classified all the methods of writing and speaking. He classified all the knowledge available of that time in ancient Greece. Okay, here's a quote by Oscar Wilde, the great Irish writer who went to England and was the best playwright in England in the late 1800s. He said, "There is no art where there is no style, and no style where there is no unity, and unity is of the individual." Oscar Wilde from The Critic as Artist. Okay, here's a quote from Steve Wozniak, the inventor of the Macintosh computer. He said, "Most inventors and engineers I've met are like me. They are shy and they live in their heads. The very best of them are artists, and artists work best alone. Imagination is something you do alone. I don't believe anything really revolutionary has been ever invented by a committee. I'm going to give you some advice, and this might be hard to take. That advice is work alone, not on a committee, not on a team." Steve Wozniak. And I think that's a great true advice, is that you have to be able to think freely. And whenever you're in front of a committee or something, you're always under tremendous peer pressure to conform what whoever's running the committee wants, versus when you're on your own, you just think by yourself and you can work to the truth. Because a lot of times there's always peer pressure to do whatever the controlling influencer wants. Okay, anyways, Nikola Tesla, he says, "Antisocial behavior is a trait of intelligence in a world full of conformists." And I think that kind of goes back to like what Schopenhauer said. Schopenhauer said when a person's really smart, people don't like that. They resent it. It's like if you're a great athlete, I know this because I used to be a great athlete. People like me. Everybody sort of liked me. The guys, the girls, the parents, the coaches, even the opposing teams like me. But when I became really smart, lots of people don't like me because I'll say something that contradicts the conformist paradigm, and that pisses people off. It pisses off the people at the top because they're making money off the conformist paradigm. It pisses off other people because their status is kind of based on it, like some professor on the conformist standard paradigm. So it's weird, but when you're in an academic field, you have to rewrite the standards, and that pisses people off. Okay, and very few people can appreciate it, So that's why it's kind of a weird thing to be in. I didn't even realize this when I was starting out. I thought, gee, everybody will like it. And like when you're young, if you get, A plus, best grade in the class or something, that's nice. But all you've done is memorize what's already known. When you start to really get advanced, you're, breaking new ground, coming up with new things. They aren't in any book. Okay, and that's a much bigger thing. So there's a difference between a prodigy and a genius. But the sad paradox is that in academics, when you get really good and you start making things better, the patient will appreciate it because they get better, but the system will not. And that's unfortunate. Anyways, Tesla continues. "The mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude. Originality thrives in seclusion, free of outside influences, beating upon us to cripple the creative mind. Be alone. Be alone. That is the secret of invention. Be alone. That is when ideas are born." The great Nikola Tesla. And he came up with all kinds of great things. And the same thing was true. Look at Isaac Newton, 1665, the miracle year, where he went by himself to the family cottage in Wiltshire, and he figured out gravity, he figured out fundamental laws of physics, he figured out the sort of standardizing his calculus. Okay, Tesla continues. "All that was great in the past was ridiculed, condemned, and suppressed." And then he continues, "I don't think you can name that many great inventions that have been made by married men." And I've seen a lot of married guys doing great things, but I can also tell you there's a big trade-off in marriage. When you're single, you're sort of hungry. And also, once you're married with kids, what ends up happening is you feel an obligation to provide for your kids. So like, look, I'm a perfect example. I got one kid in college. I got another kid in grad school. So I'm paying their tuitions. I feel obligated to do that. But I am paying a price. I would love to retire and just work in academics and do research and teach because I could figure out tons of complicated stuff that I don't think anyone else is able to figure it out. They certainly are not doing it. And it takes lots of time. You just have to sit there day after day cranking through all these papers. And, you know, nobody sponsors you to figure out the truth. They sponsor you to sell a product. So, you know, my channel, it's not monetized. It's, you know, I don't make any money from it at all. But I do it because I know it's true and I know it's good. And I want to be, you know, a great doctor. So I do it. But, you know, it is what it is. Like Watson and Crick, they figured out the structure of DNA. They didn't do any experiments. They just studied everything that was known and put it together. Because there's all these PhDs doing good work, but they're not smart enough to put it all together. They're not able to see the connections. So being able to read in a bunch of different fields and put it all together, that's what's needed a lot of times to change the paradigm of a given field. Okay, John Grisham, the great best-selling writer, he says, I do not write the first paragraph until I've written the last paragraph. Every year I try to write one novel. I start on January 1st. It usually takes about 6 months. And he writes, you know, first thing in the morning. Okay, prosody means the unity of concept in art. Prosoid means like song in Greek. Oops, got into the wrong page here. Here we go. We're almost done here with this set of quotes. Okay, we'll go to the Edgar Allan Poe quote. A short story must have a single mood, and every sentence must build towards it. Every plot worth the name must be elaborated to its denouement before anything can be attempted with the pen. It is only with the denouement constantly in view that we can plot its indispensable air of consequence or causation by making the incidents and especially the tone at all times tend to the development of the intention. So the great American short story writer, Edgar Allan Poe. Leonard Peikoff. It is the artist's sense of life that controls and integrates his work. Well, this is actually he's quoting Ayn Rand. Directing the innumerable choices he has to make. It is the viewer or the reader's sense of life that responds to a work by a complex yet automatic reaction of acceptance and approval or rejection and condemnation. So I love the Ayn Rand quote. Art is a concretization of metaphysics, meaning that you put into a viewable, you know, piece of literature or painting or sculpture what you think is valuable. So if you have good values, your art will be better. Okay, just 2 more quotes here. Albert Camus. Art advances between 2 chasms, which are frivolity and propaganda. On the edge where the great artist moves forward, every step is an adventure, an extreme risk. In that risk, however, and only there, lies the freedom in art. Yeah, you can basically try to do something good and risk making a jerk of yourself, or you can just stay in the safe mode. George Sand. Art for art's sake is an empty phrase. Art for the sake of the true, for the sake of the good and the beautiful. That is the faith I'm searching for. And that kind of comes out of the mid-1800s, where Oscar Wilde and Potter, the professor at Oxford, were sort of pushing this idea of art for art's sake, sort of separating it from meaning, separating it from tradition, partly too separating it from religion. And some people complain about that. And of course you can have art for art's sake. You can have art for art's sake just to advertise, let's say, a movie, you know, and it'll be related to the movie, even if that has nothing to do with religion, etc. But on the other hand, it's also true. Lots of great art has been made because it's inspired either by religion or inspired by something else that motivates the artist to make it. So anyways, hope these quotes on art were interesting or useful.